mind control weapons.
The race wars.
Race wars?
The race war.
I've warned you and warned you and warned you.
Are you proposing taking away their guns?
Yes.
Enough prayers. Time for some action.
You want to take everyone's guns away.
Bingo. Enough prayers. Time for some action.
We're going to take your AR-15.
We're not going to give up. We'll find you.
Oh, yeah. Time to take action. And action was taken.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yes.
ABC.
We've heard of a lot of action over the weekend.
ABCnews.go.com headline: Police, Buffalo gunman aimed to keep killing if he got away. Yeah. And the subtitle here: Buffalo's police commissioner says the white gunman accused of a racist rampage at a supermarket planned to keep killing people if he had escaped the scene. And sure, everybody knows. We don't have to read through every word, but it says here, the white gunman accused of massacring 10 black people in a racist rampage at a Buffalo supermarket planned to keep on killing if he'd escaped the scene, the police commissioner said Monday, as the possibility of federal hate crime or domestic terror charges loomed. And we'll get to more of that as well, some of the domestic terror standards that have been upgraded for such a criminal. The gunman who had crossed the state to target people at the Tops Friendly Market had talked about shooting up another store as well. Buffalo Police Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia told CNN, quote, he was going to get in his car and continue to drive down Jefferson Avenue and continue doing the same, the commissioner said. And this is the part, I don't know if there's any update on this, but the commissioner's account was similar to portions of a racist 180-page document purportedly written by Peyton Gendron that said the assault was intended to terrorize all non-white, non-Christian people and get them to leave the country. Now, I think that is important, the non-Christian, because we've talked about the weaponization of Christianity and the evangelical weaponization in this country in the 30s, 40s, 50s, especially when it comes to fighting communism. And we are seeing the exact same thing happening right now. They are weaponizing evangelical Christianity, all that stuff, and making it about something it's not, which, you know, it's been sort of the tactic throughout history, but we're seeing it again here. Federal authorities were working to confirm the document's authenticity. Gendron, 18 years old, traveled about 200 miles from his home in Conklin, New York, to commit the attack, police said. Authorities said he wielded an AR-15 style rifle.
Oh, style. Okay.
Wore body armor and used a helmet camera to live stream the bloodbath on the internet.
Right.
He was arraigned on a murder charge over the weekend and pleaded not guilty. Federal prosecutors said they are contemplating hate crime charges. Then it talks about the former fire commissioner and some people from the community. And there's a part here. Let's see, the red flag regulation stuff. I know you got a bunch of headlines to sort of wade through some of it, but hold on. Let me get to the this New York Times article, which a lot of articles seem to be basing the information about the story from. And the New York Times article headline is Buffalo Shooting. Suspect was held for mental health evaluation last year.
Yeah,
and of course,
classic story.
Yeah, a classic theme and pattern that we've noticed is that every time there is a shooting, especially when, you know, the narrative fits with a racially motivated type of killing, even if it's not, they'll say it is. They're usually, more often than not, the suspect had some kind of history. The intelligence agencies had knowledge of this person or contact with this person. And so, you know, of course, curious minds would wonder, well, what about this guy? Did this guy have a history, or was he on the radar, so to speak, with the FBI? Here's what it says in the article. The police said on Sunday that Mr. Gendron had been picked up at his high school last June by state police after making a threatening remark and had been taken to a hospital for a mental health evaluation. Always mental health issues, too, by the way. That's another pattern.
Yep.
Responding to a question for a class project about his post-graduation plans, Mr. Gendron said his involved a murder-suicide. A law enforcement official familiar with the case said. But Mr. Gendron described the remark as a joke, the official said. And after the evaluation, which lasted about a day and a half, he was only evaluated for a day and a half, he was released, according to Joseph Gramaglia, the Buffalo Police Commissioner. That account was confirmed by Special Agent Stephen Belongia of the FBI, who said that Mr. Gendron was, quote, not on the radar of federal authorities. So
sounded like he was on the radar.
I mean, the whole thing is like, oh yeah, we knew about him. He was taken into custody. We took him to a mental health thing. He was in there for a day or so. We let him out. And the FBI agent was like, yes, that is true. But he was not on our radar. Like, how do you know it's true if he wasn't on your radar, FBI guy?
Right.
Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
How are you confirming the story? Okay, anyway. So yeah, there you go. That's kind of the main sort of inquiring minds of people who question the narrative. And obviously, lives look like they were lost, and it's hard to say from across the country here, which we'll get to in a little bit. Another shooting that has some kind of geopolitical motives behind it. But these articles try to connect this whole thing to obviously a race-based thing and to what the FBI has set up for this, which is also in this New York Times article. I'll just read the paragraph here. Extremists motivated by racial and ethnic hatred are considered the most dangerous threat among domestic terrorists. After a spate of horrific shootings targeting people of color and Jews in 2019, the FBI elevated the threat to the highest level, meaning agents must prioritize developing confidential informants and take other steps to counter the violence. And a lot of times, I think that's what's going on. They are trying to create, maybe under the guise of, we got to infiltrate, we got to keep an eye, we got to, make sure these people don't do mass killings or whatever. But it just seems so convenient that they're always connected in some way. And
right.
The one thing that's interesting with this particular take from the FBI guy is that, most people are skeptical whenever there is a connection. So the FBI PR guy comes out and says, like, yes, the story's true about him getting taken into custody in a mental health evaluation last year, but he was not on our radar, as if to say, don't consider that because you guys are conspiracy theorists.
Well, that's been their problem. That's been their problem over the past, few election cycles. And you'll notice that these big spates of shootings, racially motivated shootings, pretty much entirely happen during election time. Yeah. The last time we saw a big one like this was in 2020, where there was all sorts of racially motivated action going on there. Of course, we had the summer of the Black Lives Matter, George Floyd movement. Mm-hmm. One other thing that really has been an interesting trend that we've seen recently is they are all troubled, mentally ill young men. They're all young men. I mean, they're all between the age of 18 and like 22 or something like that. Yeah, and they've all had a past. They've all been on the radar. And I think that's the FBI's problem, is that they're realizing that it doesn't help them to say, yes, we've been watching this guy for years.
Right. Before it was kind of like, the FBI have been on it. Now it's like, why?
It was
why
a data, right. It was a data point of like, oh, see, he is guilty because the FBI have been watching him.
Right.
But after so many of them, people are finally on the left, the right, it doesn't matter. They're like,
people are skeptical.
You've been looking at these guys and you're letting them do the thing. What is wrong with you? And of course, here we are painfully aware of the cycle that the FBI has been caught in time and time again, which is they actually participate in the planning and the prodding and the equipping of different quote unquote domestic terrorists to follow through with sometimes plans that the FBI themselves created for them. Most recently, the quote unquote kidnapping plot for Gretchen Whitmer, which turns out there was more FBI people planning and executing than there were, domestic terrorists. Yeah. So I think this little statement of like, oh no, he wasn't on our radar. We don't know who this kid is, even though
we can confirm that he was taken into custody and was mentally evaluated for a day and a half last year in June.
Right, which is a strangely short amount of time to be mentally evaluated.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, what kind of medications was this kid on? What kind of everything was this
what kind
kid
of
on?
Full Metal Jacket eye-opening, video
Sure.
mind control stuff was given to him to be triggered enough to go do this.
And, he allegedly posted a 180-page manifesto that, hilariously, there's been some analysts who have gone through it, were pretty much just copied and pasted from other manifestos. Yeah, I guess there were full sections of the manifesto that were just copied and pasted from the Christchurch.
See, I was going to say, the Christchurch thing came to mind, the New Zealand shooting, which was also live streamed, right, on Facebook.
Yeah. And had stuff written on his gun. This guy allegedly had names of the Waukesha incident, the victims of the Waukesha incident.
Right, because Biden didn't go, and
Sure, there's a lot of that. And of course, the Waukesha incident was a black man driving an SUV through a crowd of white people, and he explicitly said this is racially motivated, and it just didn't get reported that way, even though it was on his statement for the thing. And that is being used as like, see, he's a bitter white man. He's a bitter white man, and this is what bitter white young men do.
When they are radicalized by the media.
Right. Now, there is some different stuff going on with this one, Guns, and I find it interesting. This is what we do. We're news analysis and deconstruction. We're tracking the trends and analyzing how this is being, rolled out, as opposed to how previous shootings have been rolled out. Now, first of all, I will say these things never happen. There's never just one. There's always multiple. Yeah. And you get the first one that comes in hard and strong for sort of the racist narrative. And then kind of the ones that follow get a little bit more complicated and tend to get ignored, which you'll bring us an example of that at the end of this. But let me roll through some headlines here, and we can kind of point out how this is different. I'm going to start out with this Rolling Stone article. Of course, Rolling Stone, notoriously like just straight up lying institution, making up stories.
Used to be a cool mag about rock stars.
Now they just literally invent stories and get people to spread them. And yet here they are. Okay, so the article is headlined, "The Buffalo Shooter Isn't a Lone Wolf. He's a mainstream Republican."
Oh, brother.
So Lone Wolf.
he's
right. So there's lone wolf. We've seen this lone wolf narrative go unchallenged for many years when it comes to these guys. They're always described as a lone wolf. And when we say, on this show, when we say, no, there's no such thing as a lone wolf, he wasn't a lone wolf, we're talking about, the aid that they got
the
from
FBI that helped them pull it off.
Yeah. Lone wolf used to be a really helpful term that would take the heat off of the involvement by the FBI or whatever government
any group, really.
Right.
They're just acting on their own crazy.
Right. There's a crazy racist. But no, Rolling Stone, the Buffalo Shooter isn't a lone wolf. He's a mainstream Republican. And I'll just give you the first paragraph.
The first paragraph is the best. I love it.
It's pretty much all there is you need to hear. "There's no such thing as a lone wolf." Oh, there's no such thing as a lone wolf.
Wow.
So we've gone from, no, this guy wasn't a lone wolf, to there's no such thing as a lone wolf.
Between the headline and the first paragraph.
Exactly.
A lot has changed.
This is great. I mean, we can both agree on that. Us and the Rolling Stone. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. An appellation often given in error to terrorists who act alone, particularly those of the white supremacist variety. There are only those people who, fed a steady diet of violent propaganda and stochastic terror, take annihilatory rhetoric to its logical conclusion. Now, that's a bunch of big words, folks, but what he's saying, or what they're saying here, is that there is no lone wolf. There is someone who absorbs all of the propaganda from wherever they're getting it. Maybe it's online, maybe it's the news. Of course,
Tucker
Fox
Carlson.
News is all. They are all called out in this article. But the point is, no. There's no such thing as a lone wolf. He is a product of all the propaganda they are fed, which again is a very interesting thing for Rolling Stone to be saying as a participant in the mainstream that continually sort of praises violence by one certain group while, obviously pointing out the problems with the violent rhetoric of another side, which, look, we don't have the time to break down into the whole thing here, but the entire article is about there's no such thing about a lone wolf. They are all supported by ecosystems and networks of propaganda and violent rhetoric. The mainstream news, they're talking about Fox and Tucker and stuff like that, but also 4chan and video games and blah, blah, blah. So this really sort of, they're taking a holistic view at the lone wolf person. And their whole point is, no, this guy is not a lone crazy man. This is just a regular Republican. This is what a regular Republican looks like. And they point out all the reasons why they think that is the case. So, of course, coming up to the midterms here, we have the identification of every Republican and, racist domestic terrorists, which we've seen in more sort of allegorical terms in the media in the past. But this is just a straight up, like, 1-to-1, no metaphor, no allegory, 1-to-1. A regular Republican is equal to a racist,
unbelievable,
crazy
man.
kid.
There's a lot of crazy in this article, but it wraps with the Republican Party caters chiefly now to those who claim that to be born the wrong color is an act of genocide, an act with appropriate fervor. There has never been a lone wolf when it comes to racist terror in the U.S. It suffuses every aspect of our politics and policy, and in latter years, the mass howl of fear at change comes from a jaw that drips with blood. As long as we fail to recognize the wellspring of racial animus that animates the right wing in this country, the corpses will continue to accrue.
Exactly.
Like, oh, wow,
if we don't destroy the conservative idea, then the corpses will continue to pile up. Rolling Stone says. Literally,
if a Democrat, like a hardcore Democrat, was reading this, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, we have to continue to vote. Like, we got to get our Democrats in there because if we get the Republicans in there, they're just going to shoot all the black people."
Well, that is exactly what they want you to believe. I mean, it's extremely powerful
so crazy,
rhetoric,
man.
And in the way
Rolling
that
Stone.
Rolling Stone and this person, hold on, this
rolling
author
right off a cliff, Talia 11.
Yes, go check out her Twitter page here.
Great.
Because actually, I forgot to bring this to the. This to the show, but she's got a very interesting presence on
Looks
Twitter.
like this is her only article on Rolling Stone.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that strange?
That is strange.
It may be her first and only thing she's ever put on Rolling Stone.
Big. Maybe that's why it was so, over the top. Maybe she wanted to grab the attention of the editors over there at Rolling Stone.
Yeah, well, you look at, it's just
we could
interesting.
write something like this in satire, send it to Rolling Stone, and they might get all stoked about it,
As long as it pushes the correct ideology, then you can get anything on Rolling Stone, apparently. You can probably
get in trouble for something like that later, though.
Yeah, she wrote a book called Culture Warlords, so she's very adept at this idea of, the sort of combat culture, right. The culture of combat or whatever. She's got a new book, so she's going to get some new articles out there.
Fantastic.
And her profile page, she's like holding a big sword, standing in some sort of urban background. She's wearing a garbage bag. She's making a very firm statement here. Okay. So back to the narrative building. So there's no such thing as a lone wolf. Every Republican is a domestic terrorist. Now let's head on over to Huffington Post. Huffington Post has an article.
man.
State senator who backs white nationalism suggests Buffalo shooting was a false flag. And now again,
So weird, man.
we see the false flag coming into the mainstream. False flag used to be, simply just the word for, I don't know, folks.
Like a misdirection.
The fringy folks talking about how it's a misdirection. It doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen. It's that, there's some sort of purpose for it. The story being told is not
desired consequence.
right.
Of the events,
But, that's not what it means in this article, of course.
Oh.
A Republican state lawmaker with ties to white nationalists suggested. And at this
What
point,
is
when
tied to white nationalists?
I know,
If you're white, are you tied to white nationalists?
Well, exactly. No, it's because she's a Republican.
Oh,
you
just
see,
that's
it's
it. That's
maybe she
weird.
voted for Trump or something. So
Okay.
it's ties to white nationalists.
my
But you don't
God.
actually need those details because it doesn't matter if you're a HuffPost reader. A Republican state lawmaker with ties to white nationalists suggested the racially motivated mass shooting at a Buffalo, New York supermarket was staged by government agents. So, staged by government agents.
That's different from.
It's different. It's different, isn't it? Now listen to this.
that is
This is a quote. Quote, Fed boy summer has started in Buffalo. Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers wrote on Telegram. Telegram, the first-term lawmaker has built a national profile among far-right extremists with incendiary rhetoric, diehard support for former President Donald Trump, and an embrace of white nationalism. Authorities said an 18-year-old gunman traveled, and they give kind of the background here, except they do say something that other articles don't, which was 13 people were shot, 10 died. Most were black.
I was I read that it was 10 who died were all black. Or no, eight were black, 2 were not, and then there was 2 more who were shot who were not black. Or something like that.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway,
the
it doesn't
numbers
matter.
are pretty sketchy, but it's hard to get. But the accused killer left behind a manifesto riddled with racist views and references to the Great Replacement conspiracy
not
theory.
the Great Reset, the Great Replacement. Okay.
The Great Replacement, that white Americans are being replaced by people of color, according to the New York Times. Now, this is, I'll get more into the Great Replacement here in a second, but this is what's getting most of the attention with this whole event. It's like the memo went out and every single mainstream outlet has an article regarding the Great Replacement and just exactly how this makes, every Republican a domestic terrorist. So anyways, we're talking about this person what is her name? Wendy Rogers on a Telegram channel saying Fed boy summer has started in Buffalo. And that right there is the quote that they are using to tie into this false flag narrative. Now, remember, false flag is a term that until very recently, until like 2021, until last year, was entirely ignored by the mainstream, was pretty much only used online for, narrative skeptics to wonder what's really going on. And then we suddenly started seeing it pop up all the time. Popped up with recent shootings. It's been popping up with January 6th in the mainstream, where once they would entirely ignore the phrase, now they are using it even when it's not being used by the person that they are accusing.
Right.
And in this case,
Biden saying was the big moment. We were like, Biden, it was like false flag. It was like, whoa, Biden talking about false flags. Even though not really.
Russia and Ukraine. They were talking about false flags in the Russia and Ukraine thing.
Misusing the phrase too, by the way, from President Biden.
Just drop off. I just dropped off.
No, I was just saying that Biden misusing the phrase, but
and that's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So Wendy Rogers on a Telegram channel said Fed boy summer has started in Buffalo, and uninvited, the Huffington Post puts the term false flag in their headline when it was not even the phrase used by Wendy Rogers. So again, we have sort of the shoehorning of this I would call this almost a dog whistle, this term dog whistle that's become so popular since Trump was in office. I believe that this false flag term is turning in a little bit into its own dog whistle, and I would say primarily for the left at this point.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to move on. That's just kind of a data point there. We've got lone wolf, we've got lone wolf and false flag, and now great replacement. We're heading over to Vice, of course, and the headline here is Buffalo shooters' racist great replacement theory has been mainstreamed by GOP. And this is really the pinnacle of what I believe, this current news cycle is aimed at doing. Let me read some of the article. The alleged white supremacist who slaughtered 10 people at Buffalo, New York, grocery store on Saturday was inspired by the racist great replacement theory, one that's been tweaked and adopted by a significant number of Republican lawmakers and candidates in recent months. And there's the key. Okay, they're saying the great replacement theory, which, if you don't know, is this, let me just read it. Vice will tell us what they think it is. The alleged murderer specifically cited extremist white supremacist websites in his manifesto, saying he was radicalized on 8chan and came across the theory on neo-Nazi sites like the Daily Stormer. But the views he espoused aren't far removed by those pushed by some mainstream Republicans and conservative news outlets. And there's the key right there. Aren't far removed by those pushed by some. I was going to say
earlier, it mentioned a theory, one that's been tweaked and adopted by the Republican lawmakers. Tweaked and adopted.
So on one hand, they're admitting that, these GOP mainstreamers don't believe in the great replacement theory.
Right.
But it's, it isn't far removed, and yet it is removed. And
it's very removed,
has been tweaked and
adopted. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you look at the timeline, the rest will be apparent. The Great Replacement Theory claims that a cabal of global elites, in many versions Jews, want open borders to allow an invasion of non-white immigrants to replace white native-born citizens and outbreed the native population. The slightly sanitized Republican version swaps out global elites and Jews for Democrats instead of claiming. I know.
That's not too wrong there. I don't think necessarily.
Careful now. Instead of claiming the goal is full population replacement, some Republicans argue that the Democrats' goal is to encourage immigrants to storm the country, give them citizenship, and change the electorate so Republicans can never win again. So they're referring to the idea that Democrats want to make illegal immigration less illegal and more prevalent, and give them sanctuary. You got the sanctuary cities, you got the sanctuary states, you've got certain states that allow driver's licenses, things like this. This sort of loosening of the rules for illegal immigrants, it's being the theory that, hey, the Democrats let you in, the Democrats give you a driver's license, and so vote Democrat. And that's the idea, is that they would then vote Democrat, because in Democrat states, you're not going to, they're trying to make it so that you don't need a identification to vote. It's racist to ask for an ID for somebody to vote, things like that. And so we're all familiar with kind of the 30,000 foot view of the, part of the Democrat, quote unquote, Democrat plan to get more voters in across the border. Let me continue. Upstate New York Representative Elise Stefanik, the third-ranking member of the House GOP, has faced the most criticism since the shooting. A series of paid Facebook ads her campaign ran last fall, that explicitly used great replacement theory rhetoric. Quote, radical Democrats are planning their most aggressive move yet, a permanent election insurrection, read one of the ads. Quote, their plan to, so far doesn't seem like a great replacement thing, but okay. Quote, their plan to grant amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants will overthrow our current electorate and create a permanent liberal majority in Washington. but she's far from alone. A bevy of Republican candidates, and it goes on and on. So you get the point. The commonly held, theory about the Democrats' policies towards immigration is that, you let in more people, and if it's the Democrats that let them in, they're going to vote Democrat. And so, seems to be a pretty legit theory. Well, this theory is now being connected to the Great Replacement, where it's now no longer about, politics. It's about race, which, to the Democrats' credit, they are very good at making things not about politics, but about race. And so the long story short on this one is that it's been a perfectly timed midterm election season series of events and a perfectly executed mainstream news narrative to build the idea that you just can't vote for a Republican. Voting for any Republican is a vote for racist shooters. And I think it's going very good. And on top of that, you head over to the LA Times here. Article headline: A new generation of white supremacist killer shedding blood with internet winks, memes, and live streams. Bored during the early days of the pandemic, Peyton Gundren logged on to the 4chan message board website to browse ironic memes and infographics that spread the idea that white race is going extinct. He was then soon lurking on the web's even more sinister fringes, scrolling through extremist and neo. And it's this storyline about how the lack of government controls on the internet and the content that exists on the internet is, needs to be taken under control. And that's the reason why we have white supremacist fascists and neo-Nazis and stuff like that. It's because the internet is not as controlled. So in addition to the narrative that we've seen so far.
Propaganda Rooster says
Propaganda Rooster. So you see the coverage of this news cycle literally tapping into every single aspect of the Democrat election podium
this
here.
The internet thing is a pushback against maybe Elon's recent free speech soapbox when it comes to the purchasing of Twitter, right? So
exactly right. Yes. So this internet control-based Los Angeles Times article is specifically sort of targeted at, well, if you don't want more racist shooters, then you can't allow free speech. You can't let Elon buy Twitter. So it continues that battleground as well. Right. It's just very excellently, perfectly executed orchestra, almost like a ballet of a news cycle,
right?
From beginning to end.
They're so quick to get to all these conclusions.
It's almost as if it was, It's almost as if it was they had thought about it beforehand.
Yeah. So there's a few interesting things to point out. Of course, this is more of a side note, but maybe something to keep in mind. There were 10 black people who were killed in this event. And I don't know. Oh, man. Fox ad block, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, the story here from Fox News is Pope Francis declares 10 new saints patron saint of journalism. Which
what?
Yeah. Well, there's one out of the 10, I think, is the patron saint. But hold on, let me try to get around this little ad thing.
Oh, you gotta get in there.
I know.
You did 10. What's the timing on this? Did this happen just this weekend?
Yeah. So Pope Francis declares 10 new saints. First post-pandemic canonization ceremony. Among the 10 new saints is Titus Brandsma, a Dutch priest and journalist who was killed in a Nazi concentration camp in 1942. The others included 18th century Indian convert known as Davashaim, as well as 4 priests and 4 nuns who founded religious orders in Europe, according to AP. So it's only one of them, Titus Brandsma. But yes,
but he's the patron saint of journalism.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, gnarly. we gotta make some medallions and sell these to journalists.
And I just thought the timing of it and the number 10 being sort of a canonizing 10 people in the Catholic Church, and then the 10 dead from the shooting. I don't know. There's some weird symbolic stuff going on there. We have this Kamala clip. You want to hear what Kamala had to say about the whole thing?
I always.
Okay, here she is. A little noisy.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous. In our country, we have to recognize that we may very well be experiencing an epidemic of hate towards so many Americans that is wrong. It is taking on a level of violence in the case of what happened in Buffalo, and we've
What happened?
seen it in other places in our country, and we all must speak out against it. Hate against any one of us, we should interpret it as being hate against all of us as a nation. We are a nation that prides ourselves on our diversity as an element of our strength. And to see what has happened yesterday, an 86-year-old grandmother who had just been taking care of her husband in a nursing home, was just going to get some groceries. A security guard who had dedicated his life as a law enforcement officer and was known in the community to be one of the kindest, most gentle people who showed extraordinary heroism. I think we all have to know that this is something that we have to not only speak about, but we've got to do everything in our power as a nation to stop it. Stop it. It's too much at stake that we should be working at and thinking about. Not hating one another.
We shouldn't be thinking about hating one another. An epidemic of hate. You know, the context of putting just this real general hate as synonymous with some kind of virus that needs to be taken care of, that can spread around.
But also so specifically pointed at, of course, Republicans.
Yeah, well, yes, of course.
Not the fact that, you've got people threatening the Supreme Court justices, going to their homes, making death threats, things
hate.
like that.
That's fighting for justice.
Yeah, where's the hate rhetoric for that one? I don't know. It's weird. I mean,
choice.
You have Psaki saying like, "Hey, now nobody hurt the justices, okay?" But there's no like, "Hey, you should stop hating the justices."
Well, it's not hate, man. It's not hate if it's for a righteous reason. So anyway, this is, I think, the direction that this is headed, and there's a little wrinkle. Now, things happen around my neighborhood. I'm in a pretty dense populated area, Southern California, but this happened very close to me. I mean, a little uncomfortable. I mean, I drove past this area this morning to get where I am today. Los Angeles Times: churchgoers tackled hog-tied gunman after deadly Laguna Woods church shooting. And by the way, notice that there's that religious Christian undertone. I did point it out at the beginning of the Buffalo shooter. The Buffalo thing is weird too, like as far as location, because it's New York. Then you got the football team, Buffalo Bills. Then you can think about Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. There's all kinds of weird sort of connections you can make there. But this happened on Sunday. A gunman attacked a lunch banquet at a Taiwanese church in Laguna Woods, killing one person and wounding 5 others Sunday before congregants tackled him, hog-tied him with an extension cord, and grabbed his 2 weapons, authorities said.
Hey, okay.
So, not going to get the kind of national attention because of the Buffalo shooter. And also the guy was taken down.
They got him. No, it's not newsworthy if citizens protect themselves.
And he's a 60-year-old or Asian man in his 60s. So, and then the report is about how the churchgoers there, which many of them are veterans, showed heroism and bravery in the eye of evil and that kind of stuff. But I told you, Basil, about this, and I said, I get the feeling that this has something to do with the China-Taiwan.
Yeah, because there's a Taiwanese church, right?
Yeah, it's a Taiwanese church here in Orange County. And literally, while we are getting this show ready, ABC News: deadly church shooting motivated by Taiwan-Chinese conflict.
There
Police
it is.
say. was on
Yeah.
ABC just, I don't know, maybe an hour ago.
I can vouch for you.
Yeah,
this
I
was,
called it,
you were
man.
talking about
Stop
it. You had a
listening.
whole thing planned.
Stop listening to my Skype calls.
And then
ABC.
right when we're starting the show, they break that's exactly what it was about.
Here's what,
so do we know, was this man Chinese? Do we know? What's the deal?
Okay, so let me read what they say here. The FBI has opened a federal hate crimes investigation into the shooting. Thanks, FBI. And there's the shooting occurred during a lunch banquet.
So we have some Asian on Asian crime here.
Yes, and
that's
a microcosm.
That's quite rare, actually.
Yeah. And it says here, quote, the Presbytery of Los Ranchos is deeply saddened by a fatal shooting that occurred at a lunch reception honoring a former pastor of the Taiwanese congregation that nests at Geneva Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods. Tom Kramer, Presbytery head of staff, said in a statement Sunday, please keep the leadership of the Taiwanese congregation and Geneva in your prayers as they care for those who are traumatized by the shooting. China has long held that Taiwan is part of its country, while Taiwan governs itself as an independent nation dating back to when Chinese nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek fled the mainland as the Chinese Communist Party came to power in 1949. The shooting was reported at about 1:26 p.m. That's all they tell you about this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, is the guy Chinese or what? I mean, literally, they have nothing on it, which leads me to believe. I go back to you guys are listening in on my calls and thinking, "Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's that angle right there." And then
they don't lay out. They don't lay out any of the evidence or any of the reasons why they think that this is
it's a Taiwanese
racially
church.
motivated.
Yeah, it's a Taiwanese church, and
no mention that the guy is Chinese. It seems like it would only make sense if the shooter was Chinese.
Right. Well, yeah. There's nothing on it so far.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think you're. The suspect was identified Monday in Orange County jail records as 68-year-old Las Vegas resident David Chou, Chou, which I don't know. Oh, it says it here. Chou is Chinese, but an American.
There it is.
But an American citizen. Officials said they must have updated this article.
That's how it works.
He lived alone in Las Vegas and has a wife and a child who are not living in the U.S. Again, man, there's just something weird about just these random.
Yeah, that is very bizarre. You've got to, and yeah, I mean, but there's no way to use that story in the narrative that would help out the Democrats in any way. That we're not going to hear about it.
We're not going to hear about it.
And you're not going to get a lot. You don't have a dozen articles from the same dozen mainstream outlets talking about whatever. I mean, I don't even know how to spin that to help the Democrats. So of course they're not going to.
I mean, if anything, it kind of helps Republicans because
exactly
this is sort of look at the Chinese takeover. You thought the Chinese takeover wasn't real. Well, look at this Taiwanese, This has to be, at the very least, some kind of precursor. I mean, just the narrative construction here from ABC, getting in on early on the Taiwan-China conflict, because I feel like they know where that's going eventually here. So, so there's that. And
there was also I'm just going to mention it real quick because somebody mentioned it in the chat here. This is coming from FoxNews.com, of course. Headline: Milwaukee shooting near Bucks Celtics game leaves 17 wounded and 10 in custody.
Oh my gosh!
So we've got another shooting. This happened on the 14th, I believe.
Okay.
10 people have been taken into custody after 17 were shot in Milwaukee Friday evening near the Bucks Celtics basketball game. Police said Saturday 9 firearms were recovered from the scene after dozens were seen fleeing. Milwaukee police said, quote, everybody started running. Witness Brittany Bergstrom, who was at a nearby restaurant, told Fox 6 in Milwaukee, quote, there was a stampede, people running over the shrubs, hats, shoes on the grounds, drinks spilled everywhere. She said her boyfriend pulled her behind a brick wall, quote, and if he wouldn't have, this outcome would be a lot different. And that's all I know. And everybody took off running, and I just kept running. This happened 2 days ago now, and that's all there is to the story.
Saturday
we don't
night.
know. Yeah, we don't know who was this. I mean, 10 people getting arrested, 17 people getting shot. I mean, that sounds like gang violence to me. It's a group of people. There's a lot of guns, 9 guns, 10 people, but no details. No details. Just this one woman who was eating at a restaurant who hid behind a brick wall.
Yeah, man. And then I see that you can make the connection because of the NBA and the China ties. You can make that connection that this has something to do with that as well. And also, there was a shooting in Brooklyn a couple weeks ago, right before an NBA game. Remember? There was like a shooting. Was that a subway thing? That might have been a subway bomb or something.
There's the weird subway bomb that we haven't heard about since. So
anyway, a lot of weird stuff going on.
But you can see which shootings are helpful for the narrative, which ones get reported on, which ones get reported on from a number of different angles as they hold up the diamond that is this shooting, this racially motivated shooting. They twist and turn the diamond in the light and let the different facets fall upon the public mind. And yet there's all these other shootings. No information whatsoever, no analysis, no breakdown, no coverage, no quote from Biden, no comment from Kamala, no nothing.
Well, we want to hear from Justice Clarence Thomas, who really just, I
would love it. I'd love to hear from this man.
He's at the pinnacle of the race wars, Basil. He's a black man in the U.S. Supreme Court.
A conservative black man in the Supreme Court.
Oh, the liberal minds will explode. All right, here's what he says about the mainstream media.
One of the things I say in response to the media is when they talk about, or especially early on, about the way I did my job, I said, I will absolutely leave the court when I do my job as poorly as you do yours. And that was meant as a compliment, really.
Oh, the tag.
I think we've neglected this side of the room.
Oh, gosh.
All the way over here, yes.
What a funny guy.
It really is good to be me. It really is.
Hey, there you go.
Very quick.
Guy's got a good attitude considering all the heat his wife has got right now.
Yeah, I know. I like his laid back style.
Yeah, she's taking it easy. Good for him.
He's not
all right,
about
Guns. We need to move on.
Okay. Yeah, we're way behind today.